Well, hello, everybody. It's Matthew. We are back with a new episode of the Driven by Details podcast. On today's episode, I am joined by David Patterson, the owner of Oberk Car Care. David and I sit down for a little catch up on all the things that are taking place in this crazy year of 2025. In this episode, we recap the Gloss University grand opening event. Dave and I talk a little bit about some of the new products that are coming to the market. We also talk about our upcoming training. Appreciate everybody listening, so let's get into it.
Let's roll.
You know, Dave, we have a lot of stuff we need to talk about today on the Driven by Details podcast. And I don't really know where to begin, but I'm going to kind of just start with talking about this year and how fast this year is going by. Where is the time gone? It's already like almost the 4th of July.
Yeah, it is. It's been super crazy between new things at Oberk and the trainings that we've been doing, some of the consulting work. Continuing the evolution of the training center, challenges with training, and all the things. But they definitely have kept us busy.
I feel like I've picked my head up, and then all of a sudden, the 4th of July is that time of the year where you start out, the year starts out, and then it feels like from the 4th of July forward is like a springboard. Like it just all of a sudden, it's like before you know it, it's going to be like back to school time, right?
Yep. September. So on top of that, with my son playing baseball, life is baseball outside of work. So it's been nonstop on all angles, both work and family.
Yeah. Well, it's summertime. I feel like, the summertime is so much fun, but if you don't create the time to actually do some recreational things, it passes you too fast.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm terrible at that. I'm like, I want to do this summer and this, and we're planning it out in, April or May. And then all of a sudden it's like July, August. You're like, man, I didn't plan this stuff. We're running out of time. So last weekend, it's been pretty hot and humid, a lot of areas in this country, right, over the last week. So, it was 95, 100 degrees, and we had some plans that changed, and I kind of had a Sunday available with no baseball or no nothing. And we're like, we're going to go to Noah's Ark, So we hit Noah's Ark in 100 degrees. It was like a perfect day to do that. Sweet. I haven't been there in 20, 25 years. It's, it's the America's largest water park, which happens to be around an hour and a half, 2 hours from me or you.
Yep.
And it was a good time. It was a blast. It was nice to get away from the work grind for a little bit, even though I probably had a million other things to be doing.
It's funny that you bring that up because it was just this week I was working on a car and a neighbor was pulling by with a boat, and I was like, man, I really want to get on a boat and go water skiing because I grew up doing that stuff. And so I just thought about it. I'm like, man, I want to get out on the water. So hopefully later in August. August is the time to try to take a little bit of break. And I myself am preparing for a little bit of a break in August. I'm having surgery. I got this bump on my head that I've showed you guys that it's nothing major, but it's just growing in size. So I'm having the scheduled date for that is August 14th. And then the doctor said I need to take a week off because they're going to put stitches and I can't do strenuous work because it could stress out that area. So I'm trying to just cram everything into July, which we're going to talk about. We have a training coming up in July.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to cram everything into July, and then we have a project that we're doing to start the month of August, which we'll probably talk a little bit as well. So basically from the point of this podcast until I go down for surgery in August, it's going to be a little nuts, man. It's already been insane, but I feel like we're just going to have a little bit more insaneness from this point, as I mentioned. Probably till the end of the year, but for me, till August 14th.
Planning for the next year. So yeah, it'll continue to run into a never-ending supply of things to do.
Well, I want to talk about some Oberk stuff, but before we get into the Oberk stuff, I want to talk about the most recent thing that has taken place. We are about now 3 weeks from the Gloss University grand opening event. And I just want to kind of go back in time and talk about about the event and what it was like for us to host this event, because honestly, I thought it went over really, really well. And we made some changes, kind of like a month before, because we were going to do a car show.
Yep.
And then we decided we wanted to have it more of just about the people. And I thought it went over really, really, really well.
Yeah.
And
That's fun.
we had 38 people sign the actual guest list, but I was going back and look at the pictures. I think we had like 61 or 62 people that actually showed up. And the question everybody was asking me, Dave, was, how do you think it went? How do you think the event went? Do you think it went well? And every time someone asked me that question, like, I can't respond right away because we've never done an event like this. So like, I don't know what I would have changed or like what I would have found to make it better or make it worse, essentially, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So I was really happy with the people that attended, the
I was really
workflow
too.
with the workflow, or I should say not the workflow, but the flow of people that kind of came and went throughout the event was very steady. It wasn't like everybody showed up at the time it opened or everybody showed up at one time. There was a constant flow of people coming and going for the day. And so I like it. I don't know.
Yeah. I thought it was a great event. I mean, we had a lot of people that we've trained that showed up, a lot of people that have not been trained. Um, and it was just an overall good time. I mean, it probably would have been cool to stuff the place with 100, 150 people, but at the same time, I think it was
Right.
the right amount of people to have a really good time, be able to network and have conversations with people and just overall have a really good time. The tacos were awesome.
Tacos were
And,
awesome.
yeah, I thought it went really well.
Do you think if there was something that, because this is the question that everybody's asking me, like, what would you do different? I mean, and the only thing that comes to my mind is maybe start like either going a little later or starting a little earlier. Like that's the first thing that comes to mind for me is maybe just the timeline of it. But, you know,
I think the only thing that I would look at is like, for one, I think even though it was our grand opening event, I think a lot of people are challenged with doing trainings. I think people are having a challenge with the cost involved and the time to get to some of the more in-depth trainings. And there is a lot of value in the networking and things like that and building the community of like-minded people. So
sure.
I think doing more events like that will be something that we should look at in the future and position them similar, like have these events that are free or little cost to attend and
Right.
be able to provide some good networking, a fun day or 2 days, depending on what you do, and maybe even do them a lot more often and highlight different individuals.
Sure. It's a good point.
I think there's some people that could speak and present in relatively shorter form where we could, have a one or two guests and focus on them and as well as be able to offer the ability to network with them along with everybody else that shows up. But I think overall it was super fun. And I think focusing on the detailers, the technicians, the community, and where they can get some significant value and where we can all have a great time is probably where we will spend a little bit more time next year as we build up some different training programs.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you touch on a good point. And for everybody listening to the podcast, the original idea of that grand opening event was to have some of the vehicles, the high level vehicles that we have worked on, like the Ring Brothers and the Roadster Shop stuff. And that was kind of in the docket. And we had gotten some confirmations that they were, wanted to support the things that we were doing, but there was just scheduling conflicts.
Yeah.
So kind of like once we realized that we couldn't get those vehicles in that shop that weekend, we kind of quickly shifted our focus to the people, because that's what, you'd mentioned the community, the detailing industry. Like I felt that it would be more beneficial, like as great as it is to talk about a subject and have a high line or high end vehicle there, it's difficult maybe in those moments to actually have those personal interactions that we might want to have with these technicians.
A lot of stuff going on.
There's a lot of stuff going on. So I was really humbled to have, especially the younger guys, to see. We had Jan come up and we had Bo, these guys were flying on airplanes, and we had guys come down from Michigan and Wisconsin and Southern Illinois. I mean, people came a long way just for the day. So I think there's one thing that, we all have in common that we don't often talk about enough in the correction and detailing world, right? Is the struggle,
Oh
right?
yeah,
And when the struggle comes up, that I think there could be maybe, whether it's either like embarrassment or shame or just discomfort that's involved with it, right? Because social media has made reconditioning look glamorous and fun, and although it can be at times, there still is a struggle that goes with all this stuff. So
for sure.
working or talking to the technicians about their day-to-day jobs and some of the things that they find difficult, I think is very valuable, right?
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
we don't create enough time to do that. So I really enjoyed my time networking with a lot of these guys, and
Totally.
some people that I've never met before. And I thought it was really cool. There was I forget their first, but the Shane's Shine Shop. I've been following those guys on Instagram forever, and they're 2.5 hours away from us here in kind of more Western Illinois. And I know who these people are on
Yeah.
Instagram and social media, but then they took the drive all the way to come see our facility, and I still think there's some confusion about really what reconditioning training may look like for people.
Mhm.
And I found it interesting because Shane had said to me, he goes, well, what is Gloss University? And it was like, he kind of put me on the hot seat in that moment. And I was kind of explaining to him, our mission and our goal. And I found it kind of interesting that, we have all this information, there's all this media, there's all these resources on the internet. And some people from afar, you're still kind of just, that see it, in the distance, but don't study it. Kind of
Yeah.
like, what are these guys? What's really going on here? What are these guys doing? So kind of breaking that down and explaining to the people our mission and our goal is, I think is very beneficial. Very
Yeah. No,
beneficial.
I agree. And I mean, our training has always been a little bit different from the beginning. I mean, there's elements of business related to it, but ideally it's focused on the technician. And I think
Yeah.
as much as everybody thinks that they're good at what they do, there's always opportunity to learn more and becoming more efficient. And like you said, the business looks glamorous. It can be glamorous for a lot of people. It is, but a lot of people it's not, and it's very difficult and it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And regardless, even if it is glamorous, it is still a lot of work. So you
Yeah.
have to either one be able to become extremely efficient and understand your business and understand your customers, but also manage your business and scale it to have employees to be able to produce the level of work that you want to produce and still be profitable.
Right.
There's a lot of variables and elements in there that can make it really good if you're good at business, or it could be really challenging. And even if you are really good at business, I mean, I think there's a lot of variables that need to align in order for things to work well. And at the end of the day, it is a lot of work. So I think
It is.
if you truly understand the elements of the business, that's how you can build out the structure of what you offer in your
Right.
menu and how you do things. I think some of the biggest shops and some of the most profitable shops, I wouldn't say that they do bad work. They do a very good job of finding the line of profitability and presentation, and they align with their customers well. I think as
Sure.
a lot of us as detailers, outside of the really high level work where you need to be paid for those hours, it's really about trying to balance what you can present, right? So like, even if you have a brand new car, I could take a brand new car and I can easily spend 50 hours on it without
Yeah.
even looking at it. I could already tell you I could take a brand new car and I could spend 50 hours on correcting imperfections, defects, preparing the vehicle, doing all those things. So when it comes into detailing, there's endless possibilities into what that is. And I think all of us love to make things nice, and we want to make sure that
Sure.
there's no disappointment when the customer comes, but we also focus on areas or things that the customer might not ever really identify. And that's wasted time in terms of business and profitability. So
Wasted time. Yeah.
yeah, so there's still like the element and need for detailing on that extremely high level and where you're going to get paid for all of those things. But I think that's really the challenge when it comes to a lot of these detailers, is how to be profitable.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I think there's also kind of like a constant evolution that unfolds with that, right? I was actually on the phone last night with another technician that is currently doing window tints, and and vinyl wraps, and he wants to get into doing reconditioning and detailing, and he's going to train sometime in the next 60 days at Gloss University. And he had some questions for me about his menu. And, I was trying to encourage him. I was like, look, try not to get too hung up on your menu. Like, it's important to have a baseline to get started. But, 6 months or a year might pass and you're going to go back to the drawing board and maybe take some things off your menu or make some additions, right? I call them additions and subtractions. Like, you got to get started.
They
You got
just,
to,
the key element though is that you have to document it,
you
right?
got to document
You
it.
have to document it. There's no way you're going to remember. You're like, oh, I'll remember that. There's no way. I mean, especially when you deal with so you have to document the stuff. You have to go back and look at what you are billing out and what you're doing, and then try to cater it to that. I mean, there's plenty of people, let's say Dan Smith, he's kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And the majority of his jobs are coding jobs. So there's the opportunity to do that. Plenty of guys that are kind of in the sticks. There's not a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
but they've made a very good business for themselves, and they stay busy and they make money and they're profitable. But there's also the element of understanding your market.
Yep.
We get into, Milwaukee and some places like Chicago where you have just big cities and you have high volume car washes that are cheap, high volume detail shops that are cheap or inexpensive, and they all serve a purpose. Right? If those shops were all as bad as we think they are, which many of them are, then they wouldn't exist, but they do.
Yep.
And that's the same reason why you have plenty of products that reside on the Walmart shelves and AutoZone and Advanced Auto Parts and in the detail industries, because they work and they're good enough for the consumer. And if they didn't sell, they wouldn't continue to sell them.
Yep.
So when you get into these things where it's like $20 and $50 details when you're in the city, there can be a lot of money in there, and to us, we think $50, like I can't even wash a car for $50. But when you understand your market, you understand what you're offering, and you can create a profitable model with a few guys and it goes through an assembly line, you can pump cars out and people are really happy with what they get for $50 at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
it's a good point.
You can make money any single way. I mean, we even talked about it with the dealerships, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of dealerships want to do ceramic coatings and want to do those things, which there's a huge opportunity for increased revenue from both ceramic coating the new cars and taking in retail customers. There's a huge opportunity there, but at the same time, most of these dealerships aren't even positioned to optimize their current operation. So if you can, have the ability to look at the numbers and understand the type of business and volume they do, like you can come up with a system where it's way more profitable to be working on the cars within your facility that you own.
Yes.
Because the liability is low.
Yes.
And you can make the profitability high. So with a car counter, understanding your business volumes of these trading cars and how things work, like
totally.
Maybe you begin your process of introducing ceramic coatings in an area where you have lower volume, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's when you initiate the first sales attempt, with the sales department to upsell and educate consumers on these products that they're offering when they come in for services, and an opportunity to engage in the marketing where you start to email and provide information to all these people in emails as well to drum up that business and get in some of these customers while maybe the internal car counts are low. Because when you put it all out in paper, there's a lot of money in the ceramic coating, but when it breaks it down into like hourly revenue and what you can produce internally, you can almost produce equal to or more money with those things internally that aren't owned by other people that have a lower liability. And as long as that flow is good, the goal should really be to optimize what you have internally before you can add on the additional services, because then you're actually gaining that revenue, right? If you try to push it into something that's not structured, you're going to end up with maybe a little bit more revenue, but you're not really optimizing your current program to make it work and actually get the money that you should be.
Yeah. Well, you bring up a really great point, and I think we're starting to see a shift. And one of the big groups that we work with, it was recently these guys, our contact that we know, they sent 2 of their employees to a dealer 20 group in Washington. I don't even think I got to tell you this story, but One of the kids is 23 and the other kid is 22. And they're, wearing suit and ties and going to these dealer 20 groups and they're learning this stuff. And it was kind of a cool moment for me. I actually picked them up from the airport, had a nice long conversation with them on the way back to the shop. Because if you guys, for those of you that watch the Driven by Details podcast and follow me on Instagram, you saw that white Civic Type R that we did some work on. That was actually one of the guys that owns a car dealership. So we got to talking and I challenged them. And every time somebody goes to something like an event like this, and I do this with reconditioning trainings, and I was like, what was the biggest takeaway or what did you learn? And one of that, I asked the guys that, I was like, so what did you guys take away from this dealer 20 group? What did you learn? And he's like, well, we learned a little bit more about, managing our metrics and how to kind of break down where we're profitable and where we're not profitable. And I thought it was cool. And that light bulb for me went off in my head because I think part of the difficulties that we're seeing, at least inside that dealership model, is old mentality. Mm-hmm. You have old mentality. And I remember when I worked for the O'Hare Auto Group in the late 90s and early 2000s, Kevin Mize would always say, the owner of the dealership, you guys in the back, you don't make me any money. You cost me money. Right. And that's just like, that's not our fault. That wasn't my fault at the time. You hired me to do this job. But internally, like you had just mentioned, if everybody can kind of come together and agree on some things, they're leaving money on the table. And it's their own internal workings is what's holding them back from generating these revenues. Right.
Yeah, for sure.
That you mentioned. So I think if you start to integrate a younger person into that role, and they also happen to be a car enthusiast, you're kind of setting yourself up for some change that will start to follow. So I think we'll see some different stuff happen in the future. I always think that a big problem that I think that it's not even in the detailing industry or reconditioning industry, but the mentality of the overall consumer and how they value their cars, right? Like, we live in such a consumable world now where we don't value the things as much because there's an abundance of stuff. Oh, I can get this and I can get that and I can get this and I can get that. Somehow we've drifted, right? Like, okay, maintenance is one thing, right? Like rotate the tires, do the oil change and that type of stuff. But how do we have these conversations with people about regular scheduled maintenance for car care and car cleaning? Because the thing that drives me crazy is when we go into these shops and we see the technician trying to recondition a 7 to 10-year-old vehicle with 80 to 100,000 miles on it that's been severely neglected. Uh-huh. Just as you mentioned earlier in this podcast, like knowing your customers is like, hey, we can really make this vehicle like look, great once more, but it's going to take this allotment of time. And no one really has those conversations. So I think of it as a source of truth, right? Like if you're going to buy a new vehicle, and you're going to a reputable dealership that maybe that's a local business that you've bought several cars from in the past, oh, my grandmother bought a car from this place, blah, blah, blah. You would think, I use the term source of truth. Like you're going to these facilities and you're looking at these people to try to coach you the right way. There should be some incentive to work on these cars, like for the dealership to help the consumer care for their car cosmetically, because they're doing it mechanically. They're telling the people, hey, like, you change your oil. We're going to do your brakes. So they do all this other stuff. So again, it just goes back to the mindset, right? What is our mindset with these things?
For sure. And I think the other thing is just being conscious of reality and really having like a perspective. Like,
sure.
For me, it's very difficult to think how other people think, but it's really important in order to sell to your customer base, in order to make yourself money. But it's challenging for me to think about it even from a detailing side. Like I've met plenty of detailers that love to detail that aren't car enthusiasts. Sure. So they are detailing enthusiasts, which is great. I am too. But for me, everything in the detailing realm relates back to like automotive enthusiast to me. Yeah. So like, and I think there's probably some confusion just like with Gloss University. What is Gloss University and what do you do? And I think some people might think that about Oberk too. We get into the drifting side. We do a lot of car shows but that's who we are. I mean, we're car enthusiasts first, and the detailing and the products are to enhance that love for the vehicles and the things that we do. And
It's a
so
great
it's
point.
great. Yeah. I mean, I love all kinds of cars too. So that's the thing. I mean, we get into a lot of hot rods and seamless stuff, right? Like whether it's
Yeah.
Roaster Shop or Ring Brothers. And even then Ring Brothers is getting into some new elements of cars too. So it's not just American hot rods, right? We got a Aston Martin project that's going to be coming up in August. That's going to blow some minds. And
Yeah.
that's going to open up I believe, and I have told Mike and Nancy this a number of times, and I think it's going to open up a world of opportunities because nobody's really doing the type of thing that they're going to do in August and what they're
Yeah.
going to present. I think you can go to Pebble Beach, you can go to Car Weeks, and you can see a lot of these things. And there's all sorts of really cool prototypes and all types of vehicles, right? Exotics, hypercars, supercars, anything that you can think of. But they're going to reveal this car at the Quail, which is a
Yeah.
pretty prestigious event. It's really, it's a pricey event to attend if you can attend it.
Uh-huh.
Unfortunately, we got a family vacation, so I was going to try to be there for the event, but instead we will be doing a video for the process when we do this car.
Yeah.
We're going to be able
Which
to
I'm
save.
super excited about.
Yeah, we're going to be able to save some time and be able to not have to finish the car the way that we normally do because it's going to be getting paint protection film. So we'll be able to save some time on finishing polish that's really not going to matter and some things like that. But when you get into the realm of this stuff, I mean, you're going to see Pagani and Koenigsegg and all of these manufacturers presenting cars at the Quail. And in my opinion, from my experience and what I've seen is that you don't really have people that are doing what they're going to present outside of like Singer with Porsche and let's say like Peter Nam from Gunther Works, he's done more in the BMW world too now, but he's known for doing, high level, very custom 911 chassis builds, or Porsche builds in general. And they're cars that are designed well, they're built well, they're well respected in that community.
Right.
Even as a high level, high dollar value car, even though it's extremely modified. And what Ring Brothers is going to present is going to kind of open it all up. But even then, so I get into the Porsche stuff. I love European stuff. I mean, I like BMW, Audi, all the regular stuff, but I'm a big Porsche fan.
Huge.
I love Hondas. Like Hondas are kind of my life. We do the hot rod stuff.
You like Hondas, Dave? I never knew that.
I love Hondas.
But I also live on the podcast.
Yeah, I love supercars and all that stuff too. So we get into a lot of different things from an enthusiast standpoint, like, just to plug some stuff. I mean, we're going to be doing the Modest show in Minnesota, which is the biggest event, our car enthusiast event in Minnesota. And it's got a lot of nice cars. It's nice to get outside of our area. That is August.
It is in August.
I believe.
I don't need the hard date. For some reason, I thought it was like a September thing.
No, it's August. And then we're going to be doing the Japanese classic car show. That's JCCS in October in Long Beach, California with King Motorsports. We've got a number of events. We got another event in August with King Motorsports in the Meet. That'll be here in Wisconsin here, which will be a really cool event. I think we're going to get a lot of hardcore Honda enthusiasts coming from the Midwest to attend that show. But we've got endless different things that we're involved in. And just like the grand opening, a lot of this stuff is just networking and being a part of the community, and really be that. So for me, I think a lot of people in the detail industry look at me and they're like, oh, that's Dave. He's the Oberk guy. He's detailing and this and that. But at the end of the day, I'm a car guy, and and I love to be embedded into that enthusiast automotive network of different things that I've loved since I've been growing up.
It's great. Well, and I wanted to mention something on this, talk about this before we kind of shift gears in the podcast, but kind of going back to the grand opening event. And, prior to the grand opening event, I wanted to deliver, like a little bit of a keynote speech, if you call it that, or just like a welcome message for everybody who attended. And I sat, while I was dealing with this roofing fiasco, I had some time here where I was kind of just beached up on the computer. And so I had some time to go back and look at the analytics of the trainings that we did. And I feel like we get so consumed, right? Like think of it as a detailing project, right? If you're working on a car, you're like wrapped up and you're just like, you almost got the blinders on where you're just so
Yep.
hyper focused on this one thing that you lose the peripherals on what's happened on the sides of you. And I feel like that's what's happened with the training stuff, because we've been like so hyper focused on one event or like one class that we forget all these things that have transpired in the past 5 years. So for those guys that were not at the event and you're listening to it here on the podcast, I went through from the very first Ring Brothers training in August of 2020 until present day time. And between group trainings, individual one-on-one personalized trainings, business trainings, and coaching and consulting, we've held over 60 different events. We're 60 different training events in 5 years, and it's totaled to over 300 technicians from around the globe. Which, all right, 300 technicians, it's not a really big number, but the good thing about that is that how like that ripple effect, I feel like it's been
Oh yeah.
very impactful. We've been able to like work with a couple key players that have been able to kind of spill some of that knowledge into their environments in different places. And I think that was for me, I was like, holy smokes,
Yep.
this is a lot, right? And I feel like we're kind of really just in some strange ways just getting started, if
Yeah.
that makes any sense.
It feels like that over and over again.
Right.
But we continually see it, with the different groups that want to start training. We'll have a little bit of a lull and um, maybe realign some of the training focuses, and then all of a sudden, boom, the consulting work is back, and there's
Yeah.
a huge focus on it, and people are talking, and they're benefiting from the things that we have been able to
Mhm.
do with them.
Yeah.
And I think it's coming from a different area where it's not like a training where, hey, we're going to help you start your business, or we're going to help you expand your marketing knowledge, or whatever. It's more of
Yes.
like an overall evaluation of where you need services and what we can help provide to you, and where you maybe could use some additional resources, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think because nobody really manages these dealerships in a way that's beneficial for the department, there's a lot of opportunity rather than just going in and trying to sell them on an F&I program to get a new ceramic coating on their floor. I think that is definitely a huge add-on, but most of these dealers are not ready for it.
No, no, they're not ready for it. I mean, because like there's a logistical thing obviously that we've seen in a lot of places. And I think that happens even in like a professional environment. Like if you were to walk into like you're wherever you are located around the globe, you walk into your daily detail shop or your car wash that has a detail center attached to it. A lot of those places aren't even really set up that great.
Yeah,
They're working with, old footprints that were built 30 plus years ago, and old lighting, old electric, old stuff. And not that they're doing a bad job, but at the same time, they're not updating and modernizing their facility to accommodate modern needs and modern consumers and all that stuff. And so they're
for
leaving
sure.
money on the table,
Yeah.
right?
And there's nobody like, you don't necessarily need to have anybody that's a hardcore enthusiast, but there has to be like, in order to create the systems, or in order to create something that some of the things that we provide, you have to have an open mindset and do
Open mind.
testing. You have to have an open mentality, and you have to do your own testing.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of like maybe taking our suggestions on, this is how you implement the program. These are some products that you would use to do that. Like, unless you have somebody that is capable of testing and understanding the different things and how to do it, it's really hard to create your standard operating procedures,
Yeah.
and I think at Lake Country, it kind of gave me a big different perspective on how to approach some of those things, because I just did so much testing over and over and over and over again, that you start to understand how things change and variables that go back and forth, and how when creating buffing pads, you can't just create everything you want. There's give and takes to everything. So it's really kind of evaluating all of these different things into your process, right? And for me, it was developing a buffing pad, but you do the same thing when you're developing my menu, my
Yep.
processes for my menu, what products we use to achieve that, and then how we overcome the challenges for the few vehicles that might not fit into the category of 90%, right? Because
Yeah.
you've got to be able to duplicate the process if you're doing it more than just you.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. And, you know, we're, you're always, learning along the way, and we've been fortunate to work with a really large local store that, you know, we've been able to test some of these theories in reality in real time and
Yeah.
work through some of the things that work and some of the things that don't work,
Hmm.
right? Because that's what drives change. It's not like, you know, that's what I was telling the student the other day about his menu. I said, don't treat it as an absolute, because you can come back, like it's your menu, you can change it, but yet
Hmm.
if you dilly dally forever, and you're gonna not find a place to start or a starting point. So like,
Yeah.
just get started, and then you'll tweak it along the way,
Oh,
right?
we've learned so much stuff. I mean, even for one, every business is different. So
Yeah,
it's sometimes it's kind of evaluating them and treating it different based on their scenario and how their business operates. But again, just like I was talking about the buffing pads, there's advantages and disadvantages to all the different things that we could implement into the dealership. Like there might be a dealership that has a very clean operation, right? And they're like, hey, we would really love to have cordless polishers. Well, we're at the point where a lot of these cordless polishers are usable, like for all
right.
day, and they have enough power. But they have to be the dealerships that have some oversight, some management, and
Yeah,
detailers that are taking pride in their work, because there's a disadvantage to cords running everywhere in a dirty
yeah.
shop, but there's also the disadvantage of batteries missing and they're expensive. And so there's all these different challenges. I mean, you still need electrical because you're going to have to charge batteries. So you're going to have to have an
Yeah,
area, but you got to make sure that those batteries are charged, not getting broken or abused, and that they don't go missing, so that you have to spend the money to replace them. It could be much more costly to be managing those tools, but there's plenty of shops that can do it, you know?
sure. No, it's funny that you say that, because it makes me think like, with it's all relative to detailing, and because you solve one problem and you make another,
Correct.
right? It's like,
Yep.
yeah,
You
we
can never
fixed
have it
this
all.
issue, but now in fixing an issue, we have a new issue that is now transpired through this, you know, fixing of an issue. And so it happens all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah. No,
I
it's
mean,
been fun. I mean, you have a different background than me, so you've got a little bit more experience in some of the different car wash and chemical supply side than I
yeah,
do, but it's been, it's interesting to get into the car wash side and really kind of understand, like, okay, how could these car washes be implemented in the dealership to benefit the detail department outside of
yeah,
just washing the regular cars, and then the ones that aren't, like, like the Volvo store with ripping out a car wash in order to implement
the
a new
workflow.
new workflow and be able to streamline that process and keep the cars moving in a direction that works for everybody.
You want to know what's ironic is that while we're bringing this up, like in real time right now on the podcast, I just got a message from the Volvo store, and they're I got a picture of them tearing out, like they're in phase 2 of it now. So it's ironic. You just brought it up literally like 3 minutes ago. I just got a text message about it. So I shouldn't be checking my phone here on the Driven by
No, you're
Details
good.
podcast, but I get these little notifications here on my Apple Watch. So in the
Man,
future,
it's same here. It's been nonstop, and the phone is nonstop, and new products is nonstop, and new events is
well,
nonstop.
that's where I wanted to take the podcast. So you kind of beat me to it. So let's talk a little bit about a couple of the new things that are going on for Oberk Car Care. And because we just kind of segued from car washing, but let's start with the foam wash. All right,
Yeah,
because I want to talk about that new product. It's been on the market now for just maybe a couple weeks, or maybe just a month. Where are we at with that?
month or two or so. Yeah, it's relatively new.
Okay.
It's more of a traditional, thicker, pH neutral soap, a little bit thicker viscosity than what APS is. Works really good in foam cannons. Good balance of thick initial foam, but definitely breaks down and pulls. It is pH neutral, so it's not going to be as effective or as aggressive as APS.
Mhm.
And a lot of people were like, I don't understand why you released a foam soap with APS. And I think there's two different things. One of them, APS is relatively low foaming. Unless you're using heat, you're not going to get a thick layer of foam. And honestly, it works well the way that it's designed. And outside of specific circumstances and like prep washing and different things like that, I prefer APS in a bucket wash method for the most part anyway. But for foam can and stuff, I think it works well. I mean, APS is great for prepping a vehicle
Yeah.
for paint correction, getting it ready. It's going to
Yeah.
clean it very, very well to prepare that surface. And it's also very good for cleaning a ceramic coated vehicle to clean it, like,
To
I
cleanse
mean,
it.
and that's where it's designed. I mean, it's an alkaline a slightly alkaline soap or detergent that does and eliminates and cleans some deposits that typically we would associate with acid cleansers too. So like
Yes.
while ceramic coatings clean up very well with acid type washes, the APS works really great for that as well. Or you can implement it as a two-step, for an
Uh-huh.
acid alkaline wash, and it'll neutralize it and it really cleans the surface well. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't do well for waxed and sealed vehicles because it'll clean that and strip that surface within a couple washes, depending on the product that you're using. Some of them are going to be a polymer that bonds a little bit better or whatever, but APS will clean that surface off. So foam wash is great for people that like to foam their cars, and it's great for maintaining a ceramic vehicle if you don't want to use an alkaline soap or don't necessarily need to. And it's also great specifically for older vehicles. And
Yeah.
APS is safe on everything for the most part, but there are a lot of older vehicles that just they start to become deteriorated and
Yeah.
porous.
Delicate, right? They're
Sometimes
delicate.
they just stain with water alone,
Yeah.
so or their trim stains with water or anything like
Yeah.
that. So the foam wash is a great alternative to APS for some of those more antique or vintage vehicles that are very, very sensitive, and you just want to avoid having more issues than not. So
No,
um
it's a good point.
yeah, so it kind of fills a little bit of a void there.
I've enjoyed really using it recently, like, and it's funny that you say that because, like, since the creation of APS, like, I haven't really needed anything else. Like, that's all I
Yeah.
use. And then in the testing phase of that stuff, like, I feel like, and this is maybe just a little bit off topic, but I feel like because as long like my whole duration that I've been in the industry, it's difficult for me to become overexcited about a product, right? And so what I've noticed now recently with products that are really good performing products is like it's a delayed effect.
Mm-hmm.
Like I use it and I'm like, wow, it's really good. But then like, I use it again and it's really good. And it takes me like 5 or 6 times or more to use it till I'm like, man, I really like this product,
For
you
sure.
know?
And that's a lot of that time. That's how I do product testing too, because you don't just test it once, obviously. But that's how defense gel was. I mean, I was really challenged with defense gel because it was more in the silica sealant category, spray sealant. A lot of
Sure.
people like just a quick spray and wipe.
Right.
And this was more of like a coating application. It was just really easy and you couldn't mess it up, but you had to
Uh-huh.
wipe it on and then you had to wipe it off. So there's an additional step in there. And I think a lot of these things come down to convenience in life, right? And Amazon and everything. Everybody wants to be convenient, the
Right.
easiest way possible. So I was concerned, like, I don't think people are really going to want to do this, like, even though it's a really good product. And it was just one of those things that every time I was doing coatings or doing a service to a car, I wanted to grab the product because it was so easy to use. It was really nice, no streaks. You didn't have to deal with water-based silica where you like potentially have streaks when it's humid and things like that, or it gets cloudy. You didn't have to do any of that because it was a solvent carrier. It was
Yeah.
so it was very, very, very easy to use. It was
Right.
easy to use in high temperatures, and we had positive results. I mean, we tested on untreated paint surfaces, and it did not look great. We'll say
Yeah.
that. I mean,
Yeah.
but it was still present at 11 months, and it was a really good product. Um, but part of that was just in my shop. I'm like, every time I would go to a car, I'd grab it, and I was like, all right, we got to sell this. I mean, I like to use it. I want to use it. I think other people will.
Sure. Yeah, especially when things are easy to use and they're consistent. I mean, I've noticed it's funny that I mentioned about, APS is always my go-to for everything because it performs and it works. But since the inception of the foam wash, I've kind of have found a little joy in kind of not doing it the old school way, but just a basic foam and contact wash. Because on ceramic coated vehicles, I always like to do like just a pre-rinse. But when they're not that dirty, I'll just like the foam wash. What the one thing I will say is I've noticed on the foam wash, I feel like because of the thickness of the soap, I feel like when I'm going to wash a vehicle, if I fill a foam can with 32 ounces of foam soap, I might be able to squeak 3 washes out of a foam cannon with the foam wash versus maybe 1.5 or 2 with APS,
Yeah, for sure.
And of course, you're going to, tailor the soap solution kind of to what the vehicle really needs, right? Like my own vehicles, I never let my own vehicles fall too far out of an interval of cleaning. So it doesn't really matter. But sometimes when you're doing wash prep on a neglected vehicle, maybe one that hasn't been cleaned in 6 months or more, you need something a little bit stronger. But everybody seems to really like the foam wash.
Well, I mean, and then stronger stuff. We've been working on the MPC,
Hmm.
which has kind of started our journey into some different things, but looking at essentially corrosive and dangerous goods chemicals,
Yeah.
things that are more aggressive, which come into challenges for shipping and management of those things. But in the last 6 months, we've been diving into different car wash solutions, different stronger chemical solutions, whether they're high alkalines, high acids,
Yep.
rinse aids, or even expanding the rinse aid type product into a ceramic or silica protection,
Yep.
first versus a mineral oil type base, and just kind of diving into some different things for more aggressive and professional cleaning, and figuring out how we can implement them on closer to retail level.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, there is new technologies out there.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of those new technologies are born out of old technologies.
Uh-huh.
Right. And so it's kind of like, I think some of the things it's kind of like taking how we did it once before and then how we could do it now and just kind of merging those two things together. And I think, out of that stuff, it's trial and error. And that's why I always respect the work that you do on the Oberk side, because it's like you actually, I feel like you do a really good job of future proofing and thinking ahead. And that's what I tell people. People are like, well, why isn't this yet? Why don't we not have this product yet? And it's like, well, it's not just like a simple, just white label, something that exists in the world. It's actually kind of creating something, that's never been created before. And that takes time, right? It
Yeah.
takes,
Oh, for sure. And I mean, part of it's shipping regulations, part of it's just overall performance and working with either different types of solvents to react differently versus high alkalines, or
right.
different things to help us bypass some of the shipping restrictions, or utilizing them in a way that makes them work better. So like the new tire cleaner that we're working on, essentially the idea was that MPC was similar to our tire cleaner, but it more in a concentrated formula, so you could mix it as strong as you wanted
Yeah.
without the thickening agent, obviously. But since then, we've been continuing to work on the tire cleaner specifically and utilize different waterborne solvents, not obviously petroleum based solvents,
Correct.
along with some other cleaner packages in there. And I think there's the new one that we have is awesome.
Yeah.
But there's some real advantages to that. And I mean, I'm one that will clean tires with whatever type of solvent, because it definitely strips the oil residue off of them.
Uh-huh.
And that's great to do when you're detailing, or a once in a while thing, but it's definitely not a way to maintain tires, especially on a collector vehicle, because it's going to dry them out and make the tires bad over time. You can't constantly introduce heavy solvents to a rubber like that. But if you have a nice cleaner, you can preserve the tires. And obviously, even when you use wheel cleaner, it can brown out the tires and things like that, and
Sure.
not really damage the tire long term. I mean, I think another product like in this category, but completely different, that I have always really kind of respected in the past is actually a retail product. It's Mother's Earth, and it's a rubber and tar remover. It's like they kind of made it for like a track spray. Like you take it to the track, and you get your black scuffs and stuff that happen when you're on the track, and you can use this product and wipe it off.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it works really good. I mean, it's not going to take off everything that a tar and adhesive remover would take off, but it's not nearly as like strong. Like I've cleaned plenty of race cars with tar and solvent remover getting the stuff
Sure.
off, right?
Sure. Of course.
And half of them are covered in vinyl and things like that. And so while it does work well and it is nice, the solution to be able to use a relatively mild smelling and overall usage of the chemical is not nearly as dangerous, flammable, or just bad experience, because it's so strong.
Right.
It makes great work on a car. You can use it, wipe off all the stuff around it, and then whatever's left over, you can take your tar and adhesive remover and kind of isolate that, instead of wiping it all over vinyl stickers and stuff like that.
Sure. No, I was talking to another technician recently, and we're talking about, the differences of like the waterborne cleaners, and like, like you had mentioned, solvents work great,
Yeah.
but there are certain situations, especially in that, like the collector car or the show car, where a lot of, like if we show up at the Roadster shop or the Ring Brothers and we don't have the liberty to like pull the vehicle out into an area in a wet bay and cleanse everything the right way. We have to use some different practices and some different approaches. And I remember on this, like a light bulb went off in my head. I remember when we were doing SEMA prep for the Ring Brothers back in 2022. And we were prepping the Enyo truck. I was at Roadster Shop first and then came up to the Ring Brothers for like the last day and a half or whatever. And I was working on the engine bay. And I remember Mike Ring was in the shop and he was trying to clean something off the tire. And I gave him some solvent and he made a pass like over the lettering on there and it started to like lighten the lettering. And I grabbed it. I'm like, no, Mike, don't do that. And I think on one of the letters, like either the G because I think they were Goodyear tires, like there's like it pulled out some of the white and this is where water-based cleaner would do, it's still going to clean the tire. It might not work as fast, but if you use solvent-based cleaner on there, you might pull some of the delicate lettering, the color on the lettering off the car.
Oh yeah.
That could have been bad. We could have been airbrushing white paint onto the tires in that situation. So I don't know, when you were saying that, it just made me think of that situation at the Ring Brothers.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's plenty of solutions, but at the same time, I think there's an applicable need for just a overall balanced tire cleaner that you can regularly use.
Sure.
Especially for the enthusiast guys. I mean, that's really where like tire cleaner comes into, the guys that are daily driving their car, they're not going to go out and clean their tires. They're going to clean their wheels for the most part, even if they do that. And then the wheels and tires are going to get cleaned when it goes to a detail shop or it goes to the dealer or something like that.
Right.
So it's more for like an enthusiast, I would say, overall. Professionals too, like if you're doing regular stuff and you don't want to use solvent on every single tire, that's like a tire cleaner works well. But I think it's more for the guys that maintain their car all the time, want to make sure their tires are clean all the time, and you don't want to be doing it all. You don't want to be wiping the solvent on the tire all the time. And no, maintaining it that much.
Correct. No, it's a good point.
Took a little bit to explain that.
No, well, I mean, no, it's a good point. And so people are like, well, why don't you just use solvent? It's like, well, yeah, you can. And if you're doing it, once or twice a year, big deal. But if you got this vehicle like you're trying to maintain, there are other methods that are safer and more cost effective too. So
cost effective, yeah, for sure.
Well, let's shift into the big one, in the final stretch here of the podcast. Let's talk about this new supercut compound that has emerged. And I want to hear more about this because there's some buzz around this product right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so there's a couple different things. We've been working on it for a really long time. We started working on it back in 2018 when the company started, just because we wanted to have a heavier cutting compound. We wanted to figure out how it was going to fit in our system. But when we developed it, the pricing was just too expensive. The raw materials were too expensive. And there just wasn't a way for us to leverage the market space to launch that product. But we continued to work on it and made it better and better. And we finally kind of finalized a formula in 2022. And that was actually the case at the time. It was still kind of expensive to produce. So now we've kind of gotten some of our raw materials down a little bit where we can make it. And we launched that product last week. Most of our distributors have it. We're pretty much out of it. We got a boatload more coming in next week, and we're going to be blending, bottling, filling, and labeling and getting everything out the door. Hopefully by the end of next week, because we got a lot of distributors that received product or some that did not. So we're pushing it as much as we can. But I think this product is kind of in the realm of what Meguiar's 101 was. And I think a lot of us as technicians that do high level wet sanding really liked that product. And there's other products in that heavy cutting category, right? Like you got Fine Lab, what is it, A50?
Yeah.
You've got Kosh Chemi H9, which I think is not really in that category. It's not as aggressive. It's more categorized in an Oberk cut, Supreme cut category. You've got Menzerna 300, which in my opinion is a good product, but a lot of people like 400 better than 300, and 400 is not as aggressive.
I don't know the Menzerna line that well.
It's a great product. It's just a little bit thicker in viscosity from what I remember. So I guess it depends on how you're using it with a rotary or a DA or, any of these variables. But I think a lot of us that do a lot of wet sanding and a lot of heavy work really enjoyed that Meguiar's 101 product.
Yeah.
So one of the things that's unique about that product is it cuts very, very well, but it finishes down. And that was really our goal, is like, how can we provide a really heavy cutting compound that doesn't scour the surface? And I don't know if scouring is really the type of terminology, but that's how I refer to it. And I kind of define it
That
as
makes
like,
sense.
yeah, abrasives that are so heavy that when you use them, you can cut the stuff out, but they create so much of a scratch pattern in the holograms that it can be very challenging to understand how much you've gotten out, because the scouring is so bad. The actual marring or swirling is so bad that it can almost be difficult to see, especially when you're using a DA, because the scouring just kind of is a random pattern.
Yeah.
Um, and it requires a third step in order to get these things out.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just follow up with a second step. And while I will say most of the work that we do is 3 steps when we're sanding a whole car, just because
Yeah.
there's no way you're going to get everything perfect in that first step. You've got so many hours and,
It's
drained
true.
eyes and arms and whatever. So the mid step is really our cleanup, and to make sure that we've gotten everything and make our polishing easier. But ideally, if we did it all right in that first initial cutting step, we shouldn't need a third step, right? We can do it in 2 steps. And that was really the goal for the compound, is it can't leave a scour that you have to have a third step to remove.
Yeah.
So it's got a little bit shorter working time than Supreme Cut, but overall, it's a heavy hitting product. The Haken is German for hook. So, like, give it a right hook and knock them swirls out. And part of the reason that we chose that is, I mean, obviously Oberk is based on a German name. Most of our polishes are either manufactured or developed in Germany. This product is not, though. It's actually manufactured and designed in the United States. We're making it here, but it still resembles our brand, and it's a way for us to create a product name that is unique and protected to our brand, if that makes
Sure.
sense.
I love it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's just something a little bit different, and so far we've gotten a lot of good feedback. So
Yeah. Well, I actually use it on, again, for everybody that follows me on Instagram and Gloss University on Instagram, you've seen some of that blue GTO that I did now, 2 weeks ago. And, although it wasn't like, we didn't start with 1,000 grit sandpaper. That was more like 2K, 3K type of service. But, the first step was the new Haken compound with a rotary and a wool pad. And then I actually mid-stepped again with Oberk cut and a DA. And I like to do that because in those situations when I'm going to do 3 steps, if I encounter a sanding scratch in that second step, I still have the capacity with a fiber pad to kind of work and level some of those defects out. And so instead of going to a polish, and just practicing with different stuff, right? A lot of these things can be paint system depicting. So
yeah,
sometimes a harder paint or a softer paint might react a little different. And that's where you, the technician, is going to have to make that call, use your judgment, use the lighting, and kind of say, I think we're going to go this way. Right.
yep, for
But
sure.
I was able to get, that was like, I don't want to say record time. I made really good time on that project. And I think that having the heavy cutting, the punch up front, to bite into those sanding scratches definitely helped with that.
Mhm.
So I was floored with the way that car looked. It was a House of Colors paint job. So anytime you get House of Colors paint, it always looks really good.
Yeah, that's true too.
Um, you know,
I mean,
um,
it's really good for marine applications too, like any gel coat where you need heavier cutting compound. It's perfect for that. I think it's still a Supreme Cut still has a huge place.
yeah,
I think the majority of correction work, you'd probably reach for Supreme Cut over Haken, unless it's a high solid clear or ceramic clear or custom paint or something that you're wet sanding or gel coat, just because it's going to have a better cut to finish ratio. Like, it's going to give you that really nice finish
sure.
that's easy to polish up afterwards, and it doesn't dust as much as Haken. Haken's going to have a little bit more dust just because of the abrasive content in the
Yeah.
polish.
Yeah.
But usually, like, when you're getting into that type of work, you already got sanding slurry and you got stuff all over the place. So you're going to be washing that car or doing some type
Sure.
of cleanup afterwards where it's not as big of a deal.
Yeah, that's kind of comes with the territory. It's a byproduct, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
What do we say earlier in the podcast? You solve one problem, you make another. It's like,
Make another one. Yep.
like, hey, well, we got the sanding scratches out, but now we got some dust. And so you know, I don't mind the dust. Of course, it's the less cleanup you can do, the better. But in certain situations, it's just kind of the reality of the job, right?
Yeah,
That's
for
just
sure.
the way. That's just the way it goes. So how can we find out more, Dave? Oberkcarcare.com?
Yeah, check out oberkcarcare.com. Most of our distributors either have the product or will have the product. We'll have the product next week, but there's plenty of them out there. We've got a list of our distributors on our website. And like I said, a lot of them have it. Yeah, that's it. Check us out, oberkcarcare.com, Instagram, Facebook, Oberk Car Care. Make sure you check out the Gloucester University website.
Yes. And so before we jump off this podcast, the one thing we will bring up is for guys that are listening to this, our ceramic coating class coming up at the end of July with Aquatech Coatings. We have, this is going to be a small class because most of our classes now, our group classes moving forward are going to be on less than 10 people. And I think our limit with this one was 8 students. And right now, as the podcast is live, the class is half full. So we have 4 more seats available for
and a
local
couple considering it
technicians.
right now that we're looking at. So there might be only a couple left. But it won't be, you're going to be able to get certified by Aquatech by being at the class. But it's not like an Aquatech training program, right? Like, so it's not just you're going to come and learn about Aquatech and install Aquatech. You're going to learn about Aquatech. We're going to focus on paint correction skills, technique, approach, pads, polishes, all the things to prep and do correct paint jobs or correct paint corrections. And then the installation of the ceramic coating and understanding the different types of coatings and that not all of them are the same, but getting a general idea of the application process, how they can benefit and different ways you can implement them in your business. But it will be essentially like a paint correction class, right? With a secondary focus on ceramic coating installation and performance.
Well, and I've kind of developed the curriculum for this class to be a bit more, how do I say it, on the salesy side, where we can talk about the sales approach because this is new for us. We've never done like a ceramic coating class where we've had a ceramic coating kind of focus. And although like, right, so we ceramic coat a car, it's going to need paint correction. And this is going to, the reason I'm saying it's a sales class because we're going to have a old vehicle or a 2015 or 2016 Honda Pilot with 100,000 miles on it, right? A real world daily driven car. This vehicle's paid off. It's got some battle scars and it really needs it. Like I actually got to see the car this week. It needs a lot of work. It needs wet sanding work in spots. It needs probably a 3-step paint correction. The trim is all faded. So it's a really good test vehicle. Now, on the flip side of that, with our dealership relations, we're also going to have a brand new Honda Pilot where it'll be a different conversation, right? And so I'm kind of excited about this because I think just like detailing services, the price for ceramic coatings is all over the place.
Yeah.
And how are we selling those services based off of the allotted labor hours that are going to go into one vehicle? So, there's this notion, right, where like the consumer, I buy new vehicle, it's brand new, it's got 100 miles, the paint doesn't need any work, you just move right into ceramic coating, and that's not entirely true. So it'll be really cool to have a brand new vehicle fresh from the dealership kind of next to an older high mileage vehicle, and I think this will be, it'll spark some really good conversations and learning lessons for the students that are going to attend this class. So check that out on glossuniversity.com. That training class is $12.99. It's $1,300 for the 2 full days. We're going to have the Aquatech team there. I think we're going to do some podcasting later in the night too with Alex Russell. And lunch will be covered both days, certified by Aquatech. Guys are going to be going home with some goodie bags of some products.
Yep.
So it's going to be a cool class. So
that's going to be awesome.
I'm kind of looking forward to that. Hopefully it's not a barn burner like the last class that the private class that we just did was hot. But fortunately, we were able to get the AC to work, and we did an okay job, and it wasn't as bad. Gloucester University, because it's kind of just in a big complex with all these other buildings, it tends to stay pretty cool because the ceilings are tall, so the heat can rise. And so even when it gets hot, I was there yesterday, and it was 95 outside, and it was only 79 degrees in the building. So
it's not bad.
It's not terrible. So that's Dave. That's about all I got to say before we get on with life today.
I think that's all I got too.
Well, I appreciate you taking time out of the day, and hopefully the year can, I know it won't slow down, but hopefully we can kind of just pump the brakes a little bit. And I'm glad we got this chance to catch up today. And thank you all for listening, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.